to Recollections May Vary, a royal recap. Whether it's Windsor Wars or Royal Rebels, we discuss the latest from the British royal family. I'm Kinsey Schofield, here with Kevin O'Sullivan. You watch us together on his talk program, The Political Asylum with Kevin O'Sullivan. Kevin, I know you can't wait to watch a very royal scandal.
I certainly can't. And we're told, incredibly, that Prince Andrew is very excited about it and he's looking forward to seeing it. And he's organised a sort of screening party for friends. I mean, this guy just doesn't learn, does he? I mean, you remember the film, Scoop, didn't show him in a very good light. This is a TV series about the same subject. Of course, his notorious interview with Emily Maitlis on Newsnight over here in Britain that completely ruined his life. And he still doesn't quite get it. He still thinks this could show him in a good light. Andy, if you're watching, it just won't. So I fear that the not-so-grand old Duke of York is in for a big disappointment.
Now, can you explain this to me? Because this happened in November, or yeah, I believe it was in November of 2019. I'm in the States, so I got bits and pieces. I didn't get to sit down with the world or with your country and kind of watch it in real time. When you woke up the next day, first of all, did you watch it live? And second of all, when you woke up the next day, what was the general response to Prince Andrew's interview with Newsnight?
Well, I did watch it live. I mean, over here, and probably in America as well, but certainly over here, there was the whole nation was in a state of sort of thrilled anticipation about this upcoming interview. And, you know, we figured, you know, he'd be very drilled, he'd be rehearsed, and would probably do quite a reasonable job of defending himself, of trying to explain, to clear some of the muddy waters about it. And then I watched it with my wife, and just like by minute by minute by minute, my jaw, you know, dropped more and more open until by the end of the interview, my jaw was almost literally on the floor. I mean, the whole nation going, what is this idiot doing? I mean, the thing is, you know, Prince Andrew is so thick, he's so dumb, he's barely house-trained, and you can't let him out alone. So the palace made the massive mistake of letting him sort his own mess out. And, of course, the result now is notorious, absolute disaster. He did not, in that interview, what was it, 30, 40 minutes, he did not put a foot right at any point. You know, it was 40 minutes of catastrophe. Only he could do that. He has a special talent for screwing everything up. And that was the epicenter of his worst screw-up ever. Unbelievable.
Yeah, car crash television. We've spoken about this a little bit, but I'm very excited about it. It's coming out in 2 days now, A Very Royal Scandal, and it's a 3-part docu-drama. And it's described by The Express as demonstrating the power of journalism through a pivotal moment in British history. Michael Sheen's in it, who was also in The Queen. I typically like him, although he's kind of critical of the actual royal family. And then The Affair's Ruth Wilson. I love her in everything she does. But ahead of the release, Emily Maitlis was said to be stunned by something that someone connected to Prince Charles at the time, now King Charles, said to her. They pulled her aside 1 month after the interview aired, and they said that the king was not unhappy with the interview. And she said, the comment stunned me. The HRH was not unhappy with the interview. She said, the comment stunned me. I have returned to that one line so many times in my head, trying to fathom the meaning in the message. HRH was not unhappy with the interview. Kevin, what did that message mean when they said that to Emily Maitlis?
I think I can work it out. You have to remember that Scoop, the film version, starring Rufus Sewell, that was the story of the booker, the producer who set the whole interview up. Very nice girl called Sam McAllister. This new series a very royal scandal is very much Emily Maitlis's story, the story of the woman who did the interview. So it's fascinating that she said this. Now, this is what I can pretty much tell you is a fact here, is the reason. So we're thinking over here, why on earth did the palace let this proven oaf, this idiot, go in front of a proper journalistic programme like Newsnight? Why did they let him do this? It's because I think that Charles wanted him to screw up. That the whole affair, the Virginia Giuffre affair, his friendship with Jeffrey Epstein, which of course he so badly mishandled, he'd already landed the royal family in an absolute ocean of hell. He had brought disgrace upon the royal family. I think that the king wanted him to just go that extra mile to absolutely finally bury himself, so then the king would feel justified in taking the action he always wanted to take, and that was to cut Andrew out of the royal action. We don't want this oaf representing the royal family anymore. We don't want him touring the world representing us, because when he did, he just made a mess of everything every single time. You know, he has no diplomacy. Everybody was appalled by his behaviour, and of course the Epstein affair was already a huge embarrassment for the royal family. So the king not being unhappy with that interview, I think that the king wanted Andrew to screw up so that he could then start the wheels rolling to try and kick him out of the royal lodge, cut him out of the royal action, and just put him to the sidelines so he couldn't cause red faces for the royal family anymore. That would be my interpretation, and I think I'm on the money.
Yeah, well, you mentioned how embarrassing it was when he would travel the country. If I recall correctly, or travel the world, if I recall correctly, there were a lot of conflicts of interest when it came to Prince Andrew's dealings internationally. You know, you'd find out that somebody had slid him a couple of bucks, and there was some sort of financial exchange, especially when it came to Epstein. Epstein loaned both Prince Andrew and Fergie quite a lot of money. But the Hollywood Reporter also caught up with Emily, and she went further into detail here, saying that she considers that comment either meant Charles does not blame her for the interview, or that simply, we get it. Senior royals knew that it had to happen in order for the rest to happen, or for a realignment and a reappraisal of the royal family with the British public. Did you see that realignment, that reappraisal?
It sounds about right to me, as I say. You know, if you imagine, you know, Prince Andrew, the Duke of York, had dug himself a hole this deep, right? He was this far from the bottom. The Maitlis interview, the Emily Maitlis interview, took him to the very bottom. The king needed him to go to the bottom of that hole in order to enact what he wanted to enact about Andrew, and that was to get rid of him. You talk about when he used to tour the world, because the Queen went to the then Prime Minister, I think it was Tony Blair, and said, you know, my middle son is a feckless oaf, can't find anything for him to do, can you help us? And so he was made a trade envoy for Britain. So he travelled the world, allegedly fostering trade relations and diplomatic relations with countries, you know, the length and breadth of the globe. But what he actually did was he went round sort of like cozying up to very rich people, making himself a lot of money, really alienating people everywhere he went, because he's a bad-mannered guy. So he did nothing for diplomatic relationships. In fact, he made them worse. Lined his own pocket. And the big question everywhere he went, the main question was, where's the nearest golf course? Organise me golf. And he flew everywhere free, and that's where he picked up his notorious nickname, Air Miles Andy. And in the end, the disaster of his diplomatic relations was so bad they had to axe him from that job as well. So, you know, that guy, he just is a walking catastrophe. You know, frankly, you know, he's just, he's a moron. He's a badly mannered moron. And the king needed to get him out of the action. And so the interview with Emily Maitlis was just the job as far as Charles was concerned.
But I have only one more question about this. Well, and it's an observation. In Emily Maitlis's interview with The Hollywood Reporter, she's talking about the fallout from this interview that she did with Prince Andrew. And she says, I remember a month after the interview watching Queen Elizabeth II's Christmas speech, and she gave it in front of a piano where normally there would have been loads and loads of family photographs. It was very noticeable that the whole thing had been slimmed down. There were 3 photos. There were actually 4 photos because I went back to confirm it. But this to me is such a fascinating observation. Emily acknowledging that perhaps the palace still felt stained by that interview come Christmas time, so only included a few photos. Now, according to multiple books, this was when Harry and Meghan absolutely lost it. This was a trigger for them. They couldn't believe that their photo was not included in the Queen's Christmas message. To me, I sit back and think, absolutely, this was about Andrew. This had nothing to do with Harry and Meghan. This was the royal family, you know, just trying to reinforce the future. It was the Queen's father, her husband, Prince Charles at the time, and Camilla, and then the Waleses family. Like, Harry and Meghan took that so personally. And I think that Emily is right, that it had nothing to do with them. It was about Andrew.
Well, one of the problems for the gruesome twosome from Montecito is they think the world revolves around them. They can't see any situation ever without thinking it's all about them. But you're quite right, Kinsey, what that was. I mean, we're going back to what Charles wanted to do. He wanted to get rid of Andrew because Andrew was an embarrassment, had been for years. But also the king was, you know, on his way to acceding to the throne. He knew he would be taking over soon, and he'd made no secret of the fact he wanted to slim down the royal family. Now, Andy had always lobbied Charlie about more work for the princesses, for Eugenie and Beatrice. He wanted them more in the frame, not less. He wanted him to have a bigger role. He wanted to be able to take Fergie to family Christmases. The king had precisely the opposite ideas. Now, the exorcising, if you like, of Andrew's photo was for 2 reasons. One, he was an embarrassment. They didn't want to know him anymore. And 2, it was part of the slimming down process. And don't forget, this guy's embarrassment was so extreme that when his daughter got married, he had to sneak into the church quietly while no one was looking, couldn't pose for the family pictures, didn't give his daughter away. I mean, it was extraordinary how far that guy fell. I mean, if he wasn't such an oaf, I'd feel quite sorry for him. But I know so many stories about how rude he's been to people. You know, he's one of those people. Do you know that thing they say, you can tell a person's character by the way they treat waiters? Well, you know,
Yeah.
in a sense, if you're a member of the royal family, everyone you ever meet is like a waiter. You know, they're sort of below you on the social scale. They're going to doff their cap to you. They're going to call you sir, yes, sir, no, sir, 3 bags full, sir. The way you handle that will tell you everything about that person's character. Harry and Andrew have always been pompous and always talked badly to the servants and so on and so forth. The rest of the family are the modicum of politeness. You see what I mean? So that's the story of Andrew. They didn't want his rudeness. They didn't want his thuggery. They didn't want him being an oaf anymore. And by the way, it fitted nicely into Charles's plans to dramatically slim the royal family down. He wanted to do that. He's in the process of doing it now because he felt it was more commensurate with modern times. He didn't want to tell the British nation, hey, there's 500 of us and it's costing you millions and millions and millions of pounds for everything we ever do. He wanted to say, look, there's just a few of us, doesn't cost you that much. And that way, he preserves the royal family. Being the king, being in the royal family is always about preserving the royal family, and doing that is difficult in modern times, because, of course, you're really talking about a medieval institution and historical institution trying to find its way in the 21st century. And that's why Charles doesn't see any place for a big old oaf who's like a sort of medieval baron, and that's Andrew.
So what you're telling me is King Charles will not be at a very royal scandal viewing party at
yeah, well, I don't
Lodge.
think Charles will be invited. This is what I think about Charles. You always read these stories. It always says, of course, Charles is horrified by what Andrew's done and the friendship with Epstein, and he's made so many mistakes and so on and so forth. But of course, he loves his brother. That might be the case, but here's what I think about it. Charles does not like Andrew. Harry hates him. A lot of people in the royal family don't like Andrew. I think he's a pretty easy guy to dislike.
Wait, did you say Harry hates him?
Oh, Harry really hates Andrew. He hates Andrew.
Well, why did he not go after Prince Andrew in his book then? Because sometimes when I'm reading Spare, I'm thinking, you're so angry about the Princess of Wales not wanting to share her lip balm / DNA with Meghan Markle, but you're not mad at Prince Andrew for being kind of for hanging out with a pervert. You know what I mean? Like no mention of Prince Andrew's scandals in Spare.
Let me tell you how low Andrew has fallen. Even Harry thinks that Andrew is beneath contempt. It's just that he doesn't really register on his radar. I mean, Harry's fury is directed, of course, towards those people he's so massively jealous of, William and Kate, and towards his dad, and to a lesser extent, Anne and Edward, particularly since he's quit the royal scene. We're seeing now that he kind of wants to get back in with the royal scene. He wants to go back to frontline duties. I don't think he'll ever be allowed to do it. The only way he'll be allowed to do that is if he completely quits making money in Hollywood. As the Queen said, you cannot be both. You cannot be half and half. You cannot be over in Hollywood making money out of your royal status, which is exactly what he's doing. I mean, he isn't made money out of his talent. He's made money out of the fact that, unusually, he's a member of the royal family and he's for sale. So that, it's a free country, it's a free world. You can do that if you want. But you can't do that and come back here and act like you're a normal member of the royal family. Making money out of your royal status is an utter no-no. So if he does want to come back, and we know he sort of does, because he's got nothing else to do in America now, it ain't working for him, he's going to have to completely stop making money in Tinseltown. Otherwise, no deal. Or deal or no deal, as Meghan would say.
As Meghan Markle would say? Yeah, I think sometimes I wonder if part of Prince Harry's lack of acknowledgement of Prince Andrew is the fact that Prince Harry and Meghan Markle have basically become Prince Andrew and Fergie. Remember when Fergie was selling blenders at like 3 o'clock in the morning in the United States on the Home Shopping Network?
Yeah.
I mean, that's Meghan Markle's American Riviera Orchard. If anything ever comes to fruition, it's not too far off from Fergie trying to sell us a blender on the Home Shopping Network. Let's talk about Meghan Markle. Let's talk about the Hollywood Reporter. The Hollywood Reporter, scored that great interview with Emily Maitlis, and now they have savaged Meghan and Harry, tearing into their work ethic, tearing into their professional reputation. We've heard this nickname before, Duchess Difficult. It originated in the UK, and that is what the Hollywood Reporter is calling Meghan Markle. They say that. Oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
No, I was going to say, Kinsey, you and I talked about this on my show last night, and I think this is a real pivotal moment in Harry and Meghan's American adventure, and a disastrous moment. Because people in this country, in fact, even in other parts of America, don't quite understand quite how important a publication the Hollywood Reporter is. So they get these two news magazines come out in Los Angeles. One is Variety, another important publication, and the other one is the Hollywood Reporter. Both of them very respected, very important publications that you can trust. They're serious publications. And they're the Hollywood Bible. All the movers and shakers, you know, everybody in Hollywood reads the Hollywood Reporter and Variety. This headline, this story crops up the other day in the Hollywood Reporter, and the headline is why everyone's quitting, or why Hollywood's quitting on Harry and Meghan. Now, the reason was basically Meghan. This was a story about her personality, her character. And it chronicled the stories of all the people who've worked for her, and indeed Harry, in Montecito for Archwell. The turnover of staff, as you and I have discussed before, is phenomenal. I mean, there's something like 21 people, 22 people have worked for them since they were in Britain. People come and go with lightning regularity. They last 3 months, you know, and then they go. Anyway, someone has left their employ, in my view, and gone to the Hollywood Reporter. And the Hollywood Reporter has done this story. And what it reveals is that the quotes from sources close to the Montecito mansion setup, the quotes were that Meghan, this is it, Meghan is terrible, that she makes grown men cry. She has temper tantrums, noisy temper tantrums, sends emails at 5 a.m., is a poor decision maker, and just a nightmare to be around, and she belittles people. Now, you know, sometimes, normally with this kind of story, because it's a Hollywood Reporter, you take it seriously anyway. But perhaps you'd be a bit more circumspect about it if it wasn't for the fact it totally ties in with the exact same stories of her behaviour when she was in Britain, when she was still a working royal. The stories of her bullying staff are legion. Even once, the head gardener, of all people, went to the Queen and said, you know, the Duchess of Sussex has made one of my gardeners cry. I can't. And the Queen actually went down to see Meghan and said, you've got to stop doing this. You've got to stop shouting at the staff. But she wouldn't. And people were leaving. Memos were being sent. And we all know what happened. In the end, the Queen commissioned an external investigation into Meghan's alleged bullying. Now, this was a big mistake by the Queen, if you ask me, because that investigation, which was conducted by very, very serious barristers, a legal firm conducted it, they presented their findings to Her Majesty. Her Majesty sealed them and never released them. And that, I think, was a mistake, but I think we can deduce what was in that file. I think it confirmed that Meghan was one hell of a bully to the staff. And we never got to know here. But if you add that, if you think about that, now you think about that story last week in the Hollywood Reporter about the way she's treating people at Montecito who work for them. And, of course, you think about the phenomenal turnover of staff. This downfall, if you like, the problem that Harry and Meghan have got in terms of their showbiz ambitions is Meghan's personality, her character. Somehow or another, she rubs people up the wrong way.
That's very similar to what you said about Prince Andrew, too, that you cannot be a member of the British royal family and treat people poorly. You have to be kind. You have to show grace. You have to show humility, you know, and I see that so much when I'm around Prince William and the Princess of Wales. They just look so grateful that you came out to see them, and they ask you where you're from. How was your trip over to see them? Prince William is always so animated and silly and makes jokes. And I'm always surprised at what a great sense of humor he has. And that's also what this anonymous source said. Harry is very, very charming.
We should say that. We should say this, Kinsey, out of fairness to Harry, because we're always giving him a hard time. In the Hollywood Reporter story, while it had some very bad things to say about Meghan, it said that Harry, quote, was very, very charming. Absolutely lovely guy. So here's to him for that. But they also added, but he's an enabler. In other words, what that means, he's henpecked, he does what he's told, and lets Meghan get on with it. And therein lies their problem. I mean, she's got some understanding of the showbiz industry, not that much, but some. He has no understanding at all. And apparently they're denounced as very poor decision makers. So we know about their Netflix deal. It's about to go bust. It's about to end. So what do they do? What do they do after her cooking series comes out and his polo series?
I want to ask you, like, just visualize Meghan Markle on her iPhone, reading the sentence, she marches around like a dictator in high heels, fuming and barking orders. I've watched her reduce grown men to tears. How does Meghan react to a line like that? How is she in Montecito when she's reading these words? Is she immediately getting their attorneys on the phone? Is she shoving her phone in Prince Harry's face and saying, look at what they said? I mean, how do you respond? Because that is one of the most vicious descriptions we've ever seen of her.
I agree. I think it's this, Kinsey. I think that I'm hearing that she thinks someone has got it in for her. And she's right. It's quite clearly one of the many people who've had the misfortune to work for her. Now, the thing is, so they've leaked this story. And the thing is, just to go back to what I was saying earlier, you know this, a story like that in The Hollywood Reporter, those two will struggle to get any deals at all from now on in Hollywood. That will kill their showbiz ambitions stone dead. So her reaction when she read that story, I'd imagine, Kinsey, was volcanic. I wouldn't have liked to have been around her. I bet Harry had a bad morning that day.
Well, you're so right, because you do grab the Hollywood Reporter if to find out who you want to work with, who is making a name for themselves, who's got a new project coming up, and you want to be attached to. And the exact sentence in an industry trade Bible was, would you work for Harry and Meghan? Ex-employees say run away. Yeah. So if you are somebody that was potentially going to collaborate with them on something, or you had any sort of ambition to work with them, I think you start to ask yourself if that's really the direction you want to go in.
Yeah, I mean, especially, I mean, Hollywood is a town about getting things done, getting projects moving, development, get it going, hire the actors, get the producers. Harry and Meghan are developing an increasing reputation for never getting anything going. You mentioned American Riviera Orchard, launched in March. Nothing's happening. I don't think anything will ever happen on that now. So that looks like a lost cause. Their Netflix deal is about to end almost certainly. So what do they do next? What on earth do they do next? So we've got his polo series coming out at Christmas, the big horse show that no one wants to see over the festive season, and then her cooking series in January. After that, I think Netflix will drop them like a hot coal. What do they do then? This is a genuine question, Kinsey, because I cannot work the answer out.
I think if they were smart, and I said this after Spotify, if they were smart, they would try to brand it as, we've decided to start our own production, our own media outlet. We're just going to produce everything in-house, and people are going to bid on it, and it's going to stream everywhere. They would try to make it look entrepreneurial. Like I kept saying when Spotify dumped her, I said she could have started Spotify subscription based. She could have pursued independent advertisers on her own. They looked like losers in the way that they lost Spotify because there was no solution. There was no alternative. It was like, we've both mutually decided to part ways. No, you haven't, because there were a million other things you could have done to salvage that relationship. If they were smart, they tried to flip it and make it look like they were expanding and they were just going to create this great content and people could bid for it. But that's not what they'll do. They always do the opposite of what I think is the obvious answer.
Do you know what really attracts Meghan, it seems to me, is the idea. She's really attracted, compelled by influencing, so Do you remember, not so long ago, they said she could maybe get $1 million per mention on social media for a product, that kind of thing. Now, that didn't happen either, but she gave an interview recently talking about the power of her celebrity and all that. So what I think attracts her is the idea of making a lot of money without having to do much work. You know, do you see what I mean?
That attracts Harry too.
Yeah, well, Harry always has had a lot of money and has never really had to work, you know. So maybe in the end their problem is they're just a bit lazy. But I think probably to hit the nail more on the head, that they're always reaching for the skies, shooting above their abilities. You know, they're not television producers, they're not film producers, they don't know anything about producing television and films. And yet that's what they're going to do. Oh, we're going to start a production company. Yeah, well, you know, what's your knowledge base? Why do you think you can do this? So they do all this. Few people come in and say, oh, it's Harry and Meghan. We can make some money out of them. Here's a deal. And we know that story. That story hasn't ended well. So they're not going to have any deals after next year. So then what do? I mean, you can go on these pretend royal tours, but there's no money in that. Probably it'll cost you money. So again, I just don't know what the future holds for them. But as I said earlier, and as you and I both know, it looks to me, amid the emptiness of his American existence, that Harry has looked back across the Atlantic and thought, do you know what? The grass is definitely greener back home. I'm going to go back to Britain and open a few libraries and cut a few ribbons like I used to, and then everybody will love me. Well, unlikely. I don't see that Charles will let him do that unless he announces, I'm cutting ties with Hollywood. And by the way, he's definitely going to come back a lot more. That is quite clear. And again, the question is, well, what about Meghan? There's no doubt in my mind Meghan's never coming back to Britain. So if Harry's coming back to Britain much more, hoping to be a royal again, she's not. They don't have anything to do. I've got to say the future looks a bit bleak for those two.
Well, that is what Prince William's friends are saying. They're saying if Prince Harry has any hopes of a reconciliation anytime soon, that the Prince of Wales really has no interest in reconnecting with his brother right now. One source said he regards what Harry said in Spare as unforgivable, and understandably, given Catherine's cancer diagnosis, just wants to focus on his wife and family first and his job second. There isn't space for a complicated reconciliation process with Harry. It is not a priority. One palace insider pointed out that the message had not been signed when they sent the birthday message over the weekend. It had not been signed with a W and C or W or C when William and Catherine typically send social media messages out themselves. They just tag it with their initials.
Yeah.
I always felt like this was just some generic post on social media that went out because it was protocol, and that we kind of made a big deal out of it because there's so much silence, but otherwise it's not really that big of a deal. What was your response to the weekend's social media post?
I think it's this, Kinsey. I think that William let that go, or allowed that to happen, to please his dad, the king. The king, of course, he hates conflict. He runs a mile from it. So he wants this feud to end. I mean, good luck with that. It's a long way from ending. Yeah. So William allowed the happy 40th birthday to the Duke of Sussex to go out on the website. Now, what I think is fascinating, because the royals know this, everything they do is micro-analysed. So there's a picture of Harry, all ginger and grinning, you know, like he does, on the website. Now, that picture, and this is significant, I think, was cropped. So it was from a picture, he was sitting next to Meghan, and they cropped Meghan out. Now, of all the pictures they could use, they don't have to use one where they crop Meghan out, do they? Edited her out. They don't have to do that.
I'm going to defend the social media intern here and say
No.
That
I
picture
think it's
was
this.
that
I
picture
think
was
that
uploaded twice on Getty, and they picked the one with just Harry.
I'm not sure about this. I think it's this. All right, we can agree to differ, but hear me out. I think they're sending a message. It is a very vague message. Harry, maybe in the fullness of times, we can be friends again. Maybe you can come back to Britain, but don't bring her.
He'll bring what's her face.
Yeah, exactly. That's what
Well,
I
yeah,
think it is.
you're absolutely right when you talk about Prince William appeasing his dad, because the source also said it shows William is willing to respect his father's seniority and do what is asked of him. Just kind of in the same space, Jenny Bond recently was talking about how the Princess of Wales has persuaded Prince William that life is too short for grudges. And she said that she thinks that it was Catherine that kind of encouraged him to put aside their feud and send a birthday wish to him. I think Jenny Bond is great, but I feel like, again, this was something we knew. If you are a non-working member of the royal family, on a milestone, on something that they consider a milestone, maybe it ends in a zero, then you're going to get a generic birthday wish. I don't think we should. Jenny Bond, I love you, but I don't think we should make more out of this than it is.
Yeah. We have a tendency, Kinsey, all of us royal watchers, to overinterpret everything. To read into things too much, like my picture theory. They cut Meghan out.
You said it.
That might be. I might be over-analysing that. I admit that, but it's interesting to think about. You're right. It could have been an intern, but if William knew about it, it's interesting. Now, Kate, I'm not buying it, because I have heard down the line that while William is furious with Harry and indeed Meghan, Kate is incandescent with rage. She is more furious with them than William. And so she should be. She took more of the flack than William. William's taken quite a lot.
They accused her of being a racist.
Exactly right. Exactly right. So whilst what I think about William and Kate is, I think that their feeling is, in years to come, maybe, just maybe, we can be in the same room as that guy. But let's not forget what it is he's done. They have got one hell of a lot to forgive him for. Calling them racist, the interview with Oprah, 17 Lies, the series on Netflix calling all of Britain racist, slave drivers, his awful book Spare. I mean, we don't need to go into the details of that. This guy has been firing hand grenades at William and Kate ever since they left Britain. Really vicious, nasty exocets fired directly at his brother. So both Kate and William, I don't think they're going to be forgiving Harry for a long, long time. But I think in the fullness of time, they might actually be able to spend a little time with him. But I don't think they ever want to see Meghan again. Everybody knows that she's the source of the problem here.
Rue wants to say bye to you before we leave.
Oh yeah. Hi. Hello, Rue. Hi. I love him. You got to bring him on my show.
He needs a haircut, but I think he looks so cute when he looks crazy. All right, if you agree with us or disagree with us, make sure you let us know in the comments below. Like this video, subscribe, and share with a friend. Kevin and I are so grateful that you watched with us today, and we hope that you enjoyed our conversation. We will see you again soon.